All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as we said, thank you, and once again we'd like to welcome you back into the Dabur Red Paste presents Earth, a Culture Fest. Now's the time to move on to our next panel discussion, which is titled as Sarve, Santu, Niramaya, Wellness in the Indic Thought. This would be moderated by Ushma Williams. Now, she's worked for the British Library on two major exhibitions, Ramayana and Mughal exhibition. Please, very warm welcome to you. Mughal India, Art, Culture and Empire. You can give her a round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. She's being involved with developing and conducting workshops and tours for this exhibition. She's also set up 2 courses on Mughal history and Introduction to Hindu Philosophy and Ethics for Workers Education Association, London, and much more to her credition. But I'm going to move on further, and in the interest of time, quickly welcome in our panelists now. To begin with, I will invite Dr. David Frawley. Yes, please, come on, give him a round of applause. Dr. David Frawley, also known as Pandit Rama Jayasundar, is a Vedic teacher and author of 50 books published in 20 languages worldwide over the last several decades. We've been hearing him for the last 2 days, and once again for this one, it is indeed apt to have him with us. I'm going to move on and invite on stage Ms. Rama Jayasundar to please welcome in an NMR physicist with specialization in biomedical. Let's have a round of applause, please, for Dr. Jayasundar. She's a wide experience in MR imaging, and she has developed indigenously for the first time in the country low-cost radio frequency coils for clinical MR scanners. She's won many awards for many publications that she's had. And finally, we heard her day before, and once again she's here with us, Yogini Shambhavi ji. Thank you very much for joining us in. We heard her views on Tantra, and today once again you can please give her a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. Thank you. To briefly introduce you to her, Yogini ji is a mystic visionary, author, spiritual guide, and an educator of the ancient Vedic and Himalayan traditions. She's authored 2 best-selling books on the Mother Goddess, Yogini Unfolding the Goddess Within, and the Yogic Secrets of the Dark Goddess. So this one is going to be indeed an interesting panel. I'm going to leave you with the panel here and enjoy the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello and welcome. We've got a lot of questions. As you can see, health and wellness is so important for most of us. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I've got these questions, and I'm going to put them out to the panels. So the first question I'm going to start, because this is Sarve Santu Niramaya, we are talking about wellness and health from an Indic perspective. How did ancient Indians, and how did India as a civilization understand health and wellness? So I'm going to start with Professor Ramaji. My first question is, can you bring out the difference between the orthodox medical systems of the West and the systems in India, the Ayurveda? Because most people don't understand that there are definite differences, and the approaches are different. So, Professor Ji, please.
So, hello, good evening. I think this is a very, very important question, and the right question to begin the panel discussion as well. So when we talk of, I have a couple of slides. Can you project them? The first one. The next one, please. Next one. Yeah. So when we talk of clinical medicine, I mean, let's remember that Ayurveda goes beyond a regular medical system. There is, the focus is on, okay. So Ayurveda deals with physical, physiological, psychological, and also spiritual health. This is one of the big difference between the 2 systems. But when we are looking at Ayurveda as a pragmatic medical science, in the sense that a patient goes to an Ayurvedic doctor, gets diagnosed and gets treated. Where and how Ayurveda differs from modern medicine. I think it's very important to understand this. So if you look at any medical system, there are two important things. One is diagnosis, the other is treatment. Treatment depends upon diagnosis, and diagnosis depends upon how the human system is understood. So if the human system is understood in terms of molecules and genes and proteins and cells, the treatment, the diagnosis will be in sync with that, and the treatment will be in sync with the diagnosis. Now there is something else that determines how the human system is understood, which is actually the worldview. So none of the medical systems are fundamental sciences. All of them are applied sciences. There are fundamental sciences which actually give shape to a Western medicine, to the medical systems. So if you look at the Western medical system, the worldview, the subject which has given shape to Western medicine is basically physics, and the worldview of physics is also the worldview that has been adopted and adapted by modern medicine. So what is this worldview? You can see it on the screen here. So the worldview of classical physics says that all the physical reality is made of material objects which can be broken down to smaller entities. So for example, all the physical entities in the world are made up of atoms. So you can see a reflection, you can see that one of the point is highlighted, which says larger objects can be reduced to smaller ones. You can see a reflection of this in the way human system is understood and visualized. This is something that we are all familiar with. How the body is made of atoms. Atom is the fundamental building block of the entire physical body. Atoms make molecules, molecules make organelles, then you have cells, tissues, and so on. So the entire human system is understood in terms of fundamental entities. And in fact, this is why modern medicine is called a reductionistic approach, because it reduces the entire system to the level, if not of atom, definitely to that of molecules. Now, let's look at Ayurveda. So the worldview of Ayurveda is the worldview of the Vedas, which says that nature exists as a continuum. So nothing exists as a separate entity. Everything in this world is interlinked. So it says that the universe is a dynamic web of interconnected and inseparable entities in a dynamic relationship. So this worldview has given rise to the way Ayurveda has also understood the human system. And so Ayurveda looks at 4 different domains in the body. So there is a structural domain, there is a physiological domain, there is a psychological domain, and then there is the domain of awareness. Now each of these domains has parameters which interconnects the domain. And you can see that there are also areas of overlap. I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of this, but I just want to convey the point that the way Ayurveda visualizes the human system and is very different to the way modern medicine visualizes. You can see that figure on the right top corner. It is a structure-based visualization. So there is a structural hierarchy which is built into the model, and you can also note that there is no role for mind there. So here in Ayurveda, mind is inbuilt into all the domains, be it physical, physiological, psychological, or even the domain of consciousness. So Ayurveda, just a couple of minutes. So Ayurveda very beautifully says that from the core of our being to the vast expanse of the universe, we exist as one, and these will be covered in more detail by Professor Frawley. And this picture again brings out the difference between the two systems. On that side, you can see that you get the entire picture of the forest. The landscape is captured in its entirety from that viewpoint. Now, this is the viewpoint of modern medicine, where it talks about the microscopic structure of one of the leaf in one of the tree there. So from this viewpoint, you lose the entire picture, and from the other viewpoint of Ayurveda, you lose the nitty-gritty detail. So these are two different ways of looking at the system.
Okay. Dr. Frawley, would you like to expand on that as well?
Yes. I've been involved with sharing and teaching Ayurveda globally over the last 30 years. We have a National Ayurvedic Medical Association in the United States. We have connections with schools in North America, South America, Europe. Ayurveda, like yoga, is a global phenomenon now. And it's very interesting to note that Ayurveda today has probably greater respect and regard outside of India than perhaps inside of India. It is at the cutting edge of what we call mind-body medicine globally, because Ayurveda looks at the human being not just as a structure or chemical factory, which is the view of the modern medicine, but as an energetic pattern, manifestation of prana, as through the three doshas of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and as a manifestation or development of mind. We always emphasize developing sattva guna, and ultimately as rooted in consciousness, as accepting the concept of the Atma, Paramatma. And we like to say that Ayurveda is the medicine of yoga. If we go back traditionally in India, any application of yoga relative to healing was done in the Ayurvedic context, according to the Ayurvedic language of the pranas, the agnis, according to the Ayurvedic and the yogic view of the mind. All students of Ayurveda start with beginning to learn the cosmology of Sankhya and yoga. And there, at that level, Ayurveda becomes the ultimate way of right living and the healing of consciousness. And here there are some fundamental differences between Ayurveda and modern medicine. We've already said modern medicine is a physical, chemical, structural medicine. Ayurveda treats the whole human being. Sometimes I like to tell people that modern medicine treats disease, and the diseases are treated very well. It's the people, the patients, who aren't treated very well. There is no disease apart from a person. A disease is a manifestation of some wrong living in the person. So in Ayurveda, we treat the whole person, and the foundation of Ayurveda is not treatment of disease by medicine, but it's also what we call behavioral medicine. How we live rightly, our daily, seasonal, health regimens, right diet, right exercise, living patterns for different stages of life, for different conditions. So Ayurveda teaches us how to live a Vedic, a yogic, or a dharmic lifestyle according to our individual nature. That is the foundation of the Ayurveda. On that context, we have herbs, we have panchakarma, we have clinical methods that are quite advanced to treat specific diseases, but that's all rooted in this primary behavioral factors. Now, in modern medicine today, they are recognizing behavioral medicine as one of the main approaches to medicine, because most psychological and health conditions cannot really be treated or prevented without a certain appropriate change in our behavior. The second connection of modern medicine with Ayurveda that's coming out today is modern medicine is recognizing that the state of the flora, the state of the digestive fire, the state of the biome or the gut, the bacteria there is also affecting your psychology, even causing depression, either causing all kinds of health problems, and also determining which genetic factors may be triggered in your life. In other words, you may have a genetic predisposition towards a certain disease, but if you're maintaining the proper digestive system, these factors will not manifest. So Ayurveda has the whole science of Agni, the whole science of the pranas, Samanavayu, Apanavayu, etc., to deal with these factors. So Ayurveda is now at the cutting edge of modern medicine. Modern medicine's been reduced to certain drug-type treatments. Ayurveda teaches us how to manage our own brain chemistry through right diet, right living, through yoga practices. Ayurveda includes psychology, meditation, right living overall. So anyone who wants to live a dharmic life, starting with your physical and psychological well-being, you go to Ayurveda. And Ayurveda says that the foundation of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha is arogya, wellness, or proper health and happiness for body and mind. That is the foundation of Ayurveda. And that Ayurvedic revolution is going globally and transforming medicine from simply chemistry to prana, to consciousness, to higher awareness. Ayurvedic books have been bestsellers in the West, and Ayurveda is honored by a lot of the most advanced minds in medicine today.
My question to Professor Ji, you know, when I looked at your chart, it showed how deep the study was. So, Ayurveda, does it require rigorous training, Professor Jayasundar? Would you like to talk on that as to what kind of training one undergoes when?
Ayurveda does require rigorous training. So there is an undergraduate medical degree in Ayurveda which is called BAMS, Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery. And it's, of course, the course is fashioned along the lines of MBBS. So we have 4.5 years of theory and 1 year of practical training. So yes, to treat a patient, especially if we have to diagnose and give medications. There are also panchakarma therapies, so it does require rigorous training.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to move to Yogini ji. Now we're going to get a slightly different perspective. So Yogini ji, how would you approach as a yogini wellness? Let's have your perspective as a practicing yogini.
Thank you. So, swasthya has always been our inner nature. So, our ancient traditions and culture has always guided us to look within. So that means when we are in sync with our own consciousness, are we going to be able to heal? Because the healing power is within each of us. But we are looking more to the outside to heal us instead of moving within and internalizing this Shakti. In a way, I feel that only when we awaken the Yoga Shakti are we going to be able to truly heal and live a more comfortable, healthy, whether it's emotionally, mentally, physically. So I think all our sacred practices from ancient times have drawn us to move within, to understand that the body, the mind, the being is really a sacred space or a temple. But today we are not regarding or looking at the body as the temple. So only when we are conscious or we awaken the consciousness of this is my temple, are my thoughts, my actions, my diet, and my way of life going to influence the healing. So the Ayurveda really is a way of life. It's not a medication, it's not any outer way of bringing in the healing, but it's how we are living our life, which is emotionally, mentally, being calm, being introspective, being able to create the sthira. You see, what's lacking today in our lives is there is no sthira Shakti. So there is a certain imbalance of the elements, be it the Agni, which is very important because the Prana Shakti is the key to stabilizing our being on the inner and the outer. So what is happening today is because the lack of the sthira, the steadfastness, the calmness in our lives, we are allowing ourselves to react to the turbulence, the disturbances, beginning with nature. In the ancient times, we revered nature. Today, we have distanced ourselves from the reality of Mother Earth and Mother Nature. So there is a subtle vibrational disturbance in our minds, our thoughts, and our lives. And that is now impacting the health. So only when we move into that calmness, that understanding that the healing is our Shakti within us, only then will we understand that Ayurveda is so important to our lives.
Dr. Frawley, for you. Most of us would go to a regular Western medicine doctor. We know what the, how it works. So a lot of people did ask me, when you go to an Ayurvedic doctor, how is he going to diagnose you? So, Dr. Frawley, would you like to answer on that?
Yes. See, first of all, in Ayurveda, we're not just looking at a disease. We have to understand the unique nature of the individual. And that is why we start at the level of wellness and understanding your basic constitution. And of course, we have our simple system of doshas, vata, pitta, kapha, we say, air, fire, water element predominant people. But we look at the balance of doshas, gunas, karmas in the person. And as a general constitutional type diagnosis, we have to go through full examination of the anatomy, physiology of the person, medical history, digestive patterns, preferences, psychological factors. So we have that whole examination that way. We also have a pulse diagnosis. We have various types of palpation that we can do, and various types of questioning and answering vis-a-vis the patient. And then on top of that, we can go into more specific diagnostic methods overall. But Ayurveda starts out with the determination of constitution. Then we go into the specific aspects of the determination of a specific disease. If that is the main factor, each disease has its own symptoms. But in Ayurveda, we find we don't treat the same disease the same in different people, because the people may have a different constitution energetically, so we have to define whatever disease it is according to the doses, imbalances, according to external, internal factors, and then of course pathologies. But our concern is understanding the person, not just simply identifying an outer pathogen. The same energetic imbalances in a person can create a number of diseases, and we can treat all those diseases through balancing the constitution.
Professor G, so how would an Ayurvedic physician carry out treatment? Yeah.
Treatment is dependent on the diagnosis. So when I studied Ayurveda, what didn't come out in the introduction was that I'm also a qualified Ayurvedic doctor who has and also a physicist. So this is just to help you all listen to my answer in context. So when I studied Ayurveda, what actually struck me was the number of parameters it has. Be it physical, be it physiological, be it psychological. It has a number of parameters which some of them are measurable, some of them are sukshma, they are not measurable. And it's a combination of these which are used for diagnosing. Once the diagnosis is made, treatment becomes very easy. So because, and Professor Frawley very beautifully said how a prakriti of a person, the constitution of a person, it plays a very important role. Because when you say constitution, now modern medicine talks of genotyping. They are looking at genetic markers as a basis of difference between individuals. Now Ayurveda does phenotyping. So it looks at physical, physiological and psychological differences between people. So we know that, I have different taste and you all have different taste, and what suits me will not suit somebody else. So these are nuances of a person's nature, and this will predispose a person to certain diseases, either psychologically or physiologically, if they do not follow the rules and regulations laid down for their prakriti. So there are other parameters like age, occupation, season, and the geographical region where a patient lives. All these helps to fine-tune a diagnosis. Once the diagnosis is fine-tuned, usually the diagnosis is made on Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So a disease can either be a Vata disorder or a Pitta or a Kapha or a combination of 2 or 3. Now, because the human system, starting from physical, physiological and psychological aspects, they have been understood in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, what the ancient Indians have done in a very, very clever way is that they have brought in all parameters which play a role in health and disease onto the same platform of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So for example, lifestyle activities are also understood, classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Seasons are also classified in terms of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. All plants, all physical substances, plants, food, the food ingredients and animals which are part of our diet and also used for making medicines, all of them speak the same language of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So when a diagnosis is made as, let's for example say this is a Vata Vyadhi, then all factors which reduce Vata are used in treatment. For example, lifestyle activities which reduce Vata, they are prescribed to the patient. And all factors which increase Vata will have to be avoided. So the treatment which comprises both lifestyle changes and diet changes and medicines, they will be in sync with how the diagnosis is made. And Ayurveda has 2 different interventions. They have a physical intervention, they also have a non-physical intervention. Physical interventions will cover medicines, panchakarmas, and so food and lifestyle changes. Non-physical lifestyle changes also comes under non-physical intervention. They also, in non-physical intervention, they talk about yoga, meditation, mantra, mudras, all non-physical entities which works in the subtle realm of existence. They are used for treating.
So that brings us to our next question. We've understood diagnosing, how Ayurveda diagnoses things and how they treat it. So I'd like you all to talk about how to now translate this into action for the common man. So Shambhavi ji, would you like to talk about how to incorporate this philosophy and understanding into our daily life?
See, how I look at healing and health and life is that the prana shakti is very important. So when we talk about the inner and the outer reality, when I'm struggling with my prana, which is the life force, the only thing really permanent in our lives is our prana. Because the day the prana leaves the body, then we don't exist in this body. So when I'm struggling with my prana, I need to draw my consciousness to what is obstructing the prana, which is the ecological system today. No one cares about nature. We all may talk about it, write about it, but everyone is struggling to breathe. So if everyone voiced that my right as a living being is to breathe, well, someone somewhere has to wake up and take action. But because we all rather use inhalers or, whatever it takes, air purifiers, we are not drawing the attention to the most important aspect of us staying alive. So unless we don't integrate the inner and the outer reality, then all these sciences, all this study is really null and void. So I think the consciousness being drawn to the outer reality, which is Mother Earth, Mother Nature, I think these are the keys to really bring in any healing or health.
Dr. Frawley, we've got so many diets coming out of the West. You know, you've got the keto diet, and you've got the Atkins diet, and you've got hundreds of these various diets. So would you talk a little bit about, from the Ayurvedic perspective, how does Ayurveda understand a good diet?
Yes, there's so many dietary fads going on. I think some of these are coming to India also. And the first thing to understand is there's no simple diet that everybody can follow. You have age differences, weight differences, prakriti differences. So the diet has to be tailored as per the individual. And we have, of course, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha diets. But there's basic principles. One, you have to have food that has prana, that is natural, that is at best home cooked, and also that is spiced properly. In Ayurveda, we recognize the importance of the Agni, or the digestive fire. If that Agni is low or disturbed or imbalanced or too high, you don't digest your food properly. And then that becomes toxins, that becomes what we call ama, that invades the tissues and causes different diseases. So the foundation of physical health is the right diet. The Ayurvedic diet is very similar to the Indian diet in terms of rice and dal and proper things, but it's also avoiding excessive spices, excessive sweets. It has to be relatively balanced and tailored as per your need, seasonal according to the foods that are available and grown locally, and regular times for diet. And one thing I hate to tell the people of India, particularly Delhi, is one of the most unhealthy things is to have heavy food late at night. If you're taking your main meal after 9 p.m. with a lot of sweet, heavy, greasy food, or after having alcohol, that's one of the main problems. In India, there's an epidemic of diabetes going on, and that's also because of low-quality carbohydrates. And that's also because of irregular eating, lack of exercise, and related factors. So Anna Brahma, the first form of Brahman or the divine, is the food. There needs to be that yajna relative to the food, making the food sacred, and also honoring our connection to the universe that way. And the best thing you can offer a person is a good home-cooked meal, not taking them out to an expensive restaurant.
We're now, actually, I'm sure there are lots of you who want to ask questions. So we're going to put it out there for questions. Yeah. Okay, one more. Dr. Frawley.
What I would like to address here is what is happening in our society relative to health, and what the information technology is doing to our health, and what the modern medicine or the chemical-based medicine is doing to our health. In the West, half the people above the age of 50 are taking antidepressants. They're showing up in the water. 30% of the children are under permanent medications because there's the idea if you have learning problems, you have attention problems, you need to take a drug to address that. We also have a new drug that everybody's on, which I call the digital drug, which is the information technology, which is changing the nature of the nervous system of the people, and that is why they can't relate to children, can't relate to nature. That is why we have all the artificial junk food. And Ayurveda also says right use of the senses is the basis of health. We're not using our senses correctly. Natural sensory impressions give us prana. All this junk impressions through the media takes away our prana. So there's a major health crisis globally because of the new technology and the chemical-based medicine, and that is coming to India as well. And in the West, there's a return to natural forms of healing, honoring our earth, our nature, which is our physical body, and restoring our health connection with nature. Drugs can be used, we're not against them, but they should be used as the last resort, not as the first resort. Yoga and Ayurveda can give us the positive health, so we do not need, or we can use minimally the drug-based medicine. You can change your brain chemistry through mantra, meditation, and pranayama. You can discover happiness within you. You don't need to be stimulated outwardly through the senses. senses. You should use the technology as a tool. You should not be used by the technology. And you should find your happiness from within, not through the technology. And yoga, mantra, meditation, Ayurvedic herbs, rasayanas, massage, etc. These are important things we all need to do.
Okay, so we are open for questions. Please, anybody put your hands up, please. Yeah. So we'll start with that lady out there. Yes, go ahead.
This question is for Dr. Frawley. Sir, I'm Shweta Sharma, and I have my startup, Leaf Era, and we are manufacturing moringa-based herbal teas. So we have read a lot of research on moringa, but not much research has taken place in India.
Yes.
So can you please talk about the power or the benefits of moringa?
Oh, moringa. Okay, they also call that drumstick.
Yes, yes.
Drumstick. What happens is what the West is doing is they're researching specific herbs and plants and foods, which is good. The Ayurvedic standpoint, though, is that there's a total lifestyle that we have to bring into place. And in that regard, it's more important to understand and create a whole system of right living than to just pull out a certain chemical or a certain thing. The drumstick is a good nutritive factor. It also has some rasayana qualities, helping building the deeper tissues, and a fairly easy factor via metabolism. And it's something that you can add to your basic diet. It's something that has very broad applications. But I would like to say here, in the broader context, that Ayurveda has dozens of these wonderful herbs that the common people don't know about, whether it is not only the Chavanprash or the Brahmarasayan or the Amlaki or the Shilajit or the Brahmi. Brahmi is one of the best things to deal with the information technology. Brahmi tea, Brahmi ghee. Ayurveda has all these different herbs, and we could go on and on. She could talk about dozens of them. So it's important to recognize the whole field of products there and to go to the Ayurvedic store and discover them.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
The gentleman here, please.
Thank you. We have talked about the Ayurveda as well as the modern medicine. Sometimes, when we live in a city like Delhi, which is highly polluted, for certain ailments, for proper breathing, let me put it like this, you need an instant relief. How would Ayurveda help you? Because Ayurveda is something that needs a long-term treatment or a long-term base before you can really get effective by Ayurveda. I've had a personal experience, but if you follow Ayurveda, you have sometimes no choice but to go on to modern medicine for instant relief. Is there anything that you can do in Ayurveda which gives you instant relief for a certain ailment? Thank you.
I think it's one of the assumptions and presumptions about Ayurveda that it does not have medicines which are fast acting. It's not true. Ayurveda has many medicines which act as fast as allopathic medicines act. So it's one of the wrong assumptions that people have, that Ayurveda can handle only chronic diseases, it cannot handle acute conditions, that its medicines take a long time. No, Ayurveda has in its kitty a lot of medicines which are very, very quick to act. And the advantage of taking Ayurvedic medicines will be is that they will sync it with food and diet and lifestyle activities. So together, you can have Ayurvedic medicines treatment, which brings down the clinical symptoms very, very fast.
Yeah. Good evening, and I appreciate it's a very wonderful deliberation from your side. Let me put straight away, the original societies, the societies which are near to the nature, the Aboriginal societies, they've been to the nature, the kind of treatment they are having, like Ayushka, they use it. The same way, Saphang, it's Bhang Bajwa. It's got multiple benefits. What's your intake, sir, about Marjwa and Ayuska? Marjwa, it's a bhang, you know.
It's a bhang. So it's like a marijuana kind of.
Yeah, marijuana.
bhang.
It's a marijuana.
Yeah.
It's a bhang, you know, जो शंकर जी पे भी चढ़ाया जाता है. Cannabis.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's been banned around.
Yeah,
it's been banned around.
I know. It's used a lot in Ayurveda, particularly for pain relief. It's also antispasmodic. It's also good for certain conditions like asthma, allergies. So it has a very wide medical application that we do use. So that is there. And then you talked about ayahuasca. That's from South America. That's more used for religious purposes more so than healing purposes. But what we should understand is that through mantra, pranayama, and meditation, you don't need any drugs to reach a higher state of consciousness. And I would like Yogini Shambhavi to talk about that a little bit.
I think what's in the earlier days, they really used it for deeper purposes. Today, we're using it more for pleasure, you know, and that's why it's a misnomer that these things are going to cure us. But as I say, there are many factors which involve the usage, the proper usage. So everything has its place, but are we using it or approaching it in the right perspective?
Yeah, my intake is that because we've been using lots of LSD and all that things, which are being, especially my concern is with the younger generation, like school-going children, small children, in little bit when higher education, you know, you see there, the students are even using LSDs and all these things.
No, but they're using more the chemical, I think, not the real, you know, the true form.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they are not even able to understand why they're taking it.
No, but my another concern is, are we into the system where we can really put on, like you said, there is a lack of education, as you all mentioned, the jury out here. So we've been spending a lot of money around, the Ministry of Ayush is spending and all that. So, and people like you are doing wonderful work. Is it possible that schools take up such kind of projects, schools, colleges, and all that? They are being given the right information at right point. Thank you.
See, the present government at least has an Ayush department. All these years, the government has never supported Ayurveda or our ancient healing systems. So, I mean, I hope that in the next term, there will be more implementations at an educational level of the Ayurveda.
And
do you want to?
Yeah, the basics of yoga and Ayurveda should be introduced into the schools. Ayurveda is a lot about natural living, right diet, daily seasonal regimens, all of that. It's very universal. And yoga in terms of not only asana, pranayama, but basic meditation, wellness, and right living, that needs to be done. And if we can do these things, we can reduce the dependency on the drug-based medicine, and we can deal with this technology that's otherwise going to have many problems of social and physical health, such as we are starting to see globally.
Well, Professor, I have just one question. Actually, whole world is now searching for a miracle drug on cancer because it is costing millions of lives. So, is there any remedy available in Ayurveda, as it was mentioned earlier as Karkot Rog?
The answer is very simple, yes, it has.
But why then it is not practiced? I mean, even people are dying.
No, I think I think what is important, I'm beginning to realize how important it is for the Indian people to understand what Ayurveda can do, what it cannot. There are, by virtue of being Indian, you know, we cannot know everything about Ayurveda. So the basic awareness about how Ayurveda handles health and disease and what is happening at the ground level is very important. There are, if you look at cancer in particular, the practical reality, ground reality is that only when Western medicine fails, patients go to Ayurveda. Now this said, there are also patients who get Ayurvedic treatment as a standalone therapy. So there are, Ayurveda is being used left, right, and center at different levels of cancer management. But the awareness is not there. So the answer, the simple answer to your question, which I gave right in the beginning, is that Ayurveda can treat cancer. The reason why I'm telling this with so much confidence is that Ayurveda is a theory-based system. It has a theory. So if you have a theory of health and disease, it doesn't matter whether it was a disease which was mentioned in Charaka and Sushruta Samhita, right? So, or whether it is mentioned now or later, it doesn't really matter. So you use the theory to make the diagnosis and then give the treatment. Once the diagnosis is made, the treatment becomes very easy. So there is no dearth of medicines in Ayurveda. We are talking about a system which has been using plants as medicines for thousands and thousands of years. And the kind of hold and knowledge that Ayurveda has on medicinal plants, I don't think there's any other system in the world which has this kind of hold. So we have immense knowledge and expertise which have been very thoroughly documented as well. But Indians are so good at shooting ourselves in our foot. You know, we are either left or right. We do not have that scientific objectivity to look into what is there without a prejudice or bias. If we look into it, then, you know, we will get to know what Ayurveda's potential is. And it has immense potential.
Okay, I'm afraid we've run out of time. So we've got to stop, but I'm sure all of them, if you have any questions, why don't you come after, not right now, but why don't you come back backstage or something and ask them, yeah? We have to stop. But before I end the program, I found a lovely little subhashita in Sanskrit, which I'm just going to read out to you. And it's actually a funny one. It's supposed to be taken quite lightly. Vaidyaraj namastubhyam yamaraj sahodara Yamastu harati pranan, vaidyo pranan dhanani cha. It means Vaidyaraj namas, meaning, oh Vaidya, doctor, brother of Yama, I bow down to you. Yama only steals away one's life, but the Vaidya steals one's life as well as money. And on that we'll end. Thank you.
Kojo, kojo. Kojo, kojo. Kojo, kojo. Kojo, kojo.